For all of the crappy things Nvidia has been responsible for these last few months, looking at you, GPP, at least no one can say that they've been stingy with information on their next-gen graphics cards. Many companies keep their customers in the dark for ages, but not what? Nvidia still hasn't detailed anything about their next-gen GPUs? Even though the release is already like months overdue? Oh, fantastic. Luckily, anyone who's been online at all this century will know that there's no shortage of next-gen Nvidia GPU information doing the rounds in the form of rumors. But which rumors are actually worth paying attention to, which are complete tiddlywink, and which ones have already been sort of, but not really confirmed? Well, that's what we'll be discussing in this video. And yes, we'll be looking at rumors again, but this is a compilation video. It's kind of like a callbacks to our greatest hits. So let's start with a bushel nope. These rumors are blackcurrant flavored gummies that exist only to confuse and disappoint, unless of course you like blackcurrant gummies, in which case we can't be friends. They're absolutely disgusting. Grape or bust. These rumors have either already been debunked or just seem far too unlikely to actually be true. Speaking of the former, contrary to what many rumors suggested, the next-gen GeForce cards weren't announced at CES this year. Neither did they make an appearance at the annual GDC or Nvidia's own GTC conference. Oh, and also if you're keeping count, they also didn't debut at Nvidia's mini conference right before Computex, known as GTC Taiwan, or at Computex itself for that matter. Rumors have pinned the announcement of these cards on so many different dates and events that we can't keep count. And so far, they've all been wrong, at least the ones that pointed to dates and events that have already come and gone. I mean, as soon as the goalpost moves, you just point to another event. Hey, that's the next major event, that's when Nvidia's gonna do it. The point here is that figuring out exactly when and where Nvidia will choose to drop these things on us is apparently no easy feat and makes us take any such rumor with more salt than what's dumped over crappy cold McDonald's fries. Rocco Mama's fries for life! Woo! Seriously guys, if you haven't had Rocco Mama's fries, magnificent. Probably the epitome of just how little information Nvidia has given us over the last few months are the rumors about what the architecture on these cards would be built on. First, we and everyone else assumed that the cards would be built on the Volta architecture. After all, Volta isn't a mythical thing. Volta is already out in the wild, powering Nvidia's latest Tesla, Quadro, and Xavier offerings, and let's not forget about the drool-inducing, stupidly expensive Titan V. But cards like the Titan V include many features and components that would make them severely overpowered for gaming in a way that no other Titan before it has been, and so rumors began to stir. One rumor suggested that gamers wouldn't be getting Volta at all, but cards based on an architecture called Ampere. Other rumors then suggested that no, gamers would be getting the Turing architecture. All of this eventually evolved into a rumor that Volta would stick to sciencey applications, gamers would get Ampere, and interestingly enough, Turing would be an entirely different architecture devoted to mining cards. The whole Turing equals mining thing made sense at the time, seeing as Alan Turing, the man with the dope haircut upon which the name's based, was big into cryptography. But this whole architecture naming kerfuffle was pointless, as these rumors probably all missed the nail. After Gamers Nexus revealed that the sources have pinned Turing as the name of the next-gen GeForce architecture, everyone just sort of ran with it. But what makes the Turing nomenclature especially compelling is a tweet posted by Nvidia wishing Alan Turing a happy birthday. Nvidia isn't in the habit of sending out tweets like that without some sort of tie-in with their products, so, you know, probably Turing then. Recently, there was a Tech of Tomorrow video that was published stating that the next-gen cards would be a refresh of Pascal and that there would actually be no difference, but in that video, he quotes no source, he cites nothing, and basically says this is a rumor that he's heard, so we'll chalk that up to him just speculating because we have no official details on that whatsoever, and that's the first that I'm hearing, that it'd be a refresh, and it'd be super weird for Nvidia to wait 2 years and then to not release a new architecture, at the very least. Like, even if it's just a die shrink, we would basically be getting that. Again, he could be right, but at the same time, there's not a whole lot to go on there. Now, more data is needed. If the list of debunked rumors seems a little short, it's because it is. And it's short because there are tons of rumors out there that, well, not all exactly credible as we'd like them to be, can't just be tossed aside like Reece after not delivering a fire jingle for hot news. Some of these next few rumors might sound too good or too bad to be true, and others might seem like a stab in the dark, but they're all very interesting and might well turn out to be entirely legitimate. We'll just have to wait and see. And we might not not have to wait too much longer if this next collection of rumors is to be believed. Previously, we spoke about taking announcement dates for the upcoming cards with as much salt and sunscreen as you can carry. Sunscreen because we've been burnt before. Ooh, that was a good pun. And we still recommend doing so. However, the latest round of rumors about when the cards might surface definitely seems like the most credible ones we've seen so far. The first comes from sources who spoke to Tweaktown at Computex, sources who claim that Nvidia would be revealing their next-gen babies to the world on July 30th. Okay, so that's in 19 days from now. This date doesn't seem too outlandish, especially since all three of the major producers of GDDR6 memory should be well underway mass producing the modules at that point. But other than the author's word, we don't really have too much else to work with. Perhaps then, slightly more substantiated rumors pointing to a late August reveal of the cards are what we should be keeping an eye on. We should also mention that GamerMeld said that he had a source that said that these cards would be released, including the AIB partners, be actually out on July 30th, which is nearly impossible. Nvidia is not releasing the cards, especially with not having announced them within a fortnight. So that's basically, I wouldn't trust that rumor at all. One of the theories we especially liked was that Nvidia was planning on blowing the lid off of the Turing architecture during the Hot Chip Symposium running from the 19th to the 21st of August. We liked this theory because when the program for the symposium first went up, it included a slot for Nvidia named, quote, Nvidia's next generation mainstream GPU, end quote. Now, I don't know about y'all, but that sure as spaghetti sounded like a confirmed announcement date to us, or at least it was after the announcement date where they would be discussing it more in depth, so we would have the cards already. Unfortunately, our excitement was short-lived as any reference to new mainstream GPUs was nuked faster than literally any giant monster in any giant monster movie ever. The quick removal of the info could mean that there was some miscommunication somewhere, or more likely that Nvidia didn't want to spoil their fun just yet. Either way, we're not counting hot chips out as a possibility just yet. Even though they removed the date and they removed the title of the talk, it's still possible that Nvidia could be presenting there. And while we're talking about possibilities, there's also a very real one that Nvidia might actually use Gamescom, running from 21st to 25th August, as the platform for the announcement. This rumor comes from videocards.com, which claims to have heard that Nvidia is sending journalist invites to the event. Not just sending invites, but actually flying people out to the event, making a big stink out of it, as it were. The site states that the invitation makes no mention of new GPUs though, but quote, no one would offer a free trip to Europe if it wasn't important, end quote. A compelling case can be made then that the cards will be unveiled sometime between the end of July and the end of August. On the other hand, Nvidia's CEO did mention right before Computex last month that the announcement is still a long time off. But I mean, Jensen's a long time could be wildly different from ours or yours, so who knows? But I mean, I've said this 1,000 times and I'll continue to say it now. He was basically telling everybody to shut up about the 11 series and talk about the things that they unveiled right at GTC. He didn't want to talk about future things, he wanted to talk about things that they were actually discussing. It might seem like Nvidia keeps pushing the launch of these cards further and further back, and that could actually be the case if yet another round of rumors and speculation is to be believed. According to these, Nvidia highly overestimated how much demand there'd continue to be for Pascal cards for mining and overproduced a tad too many cards. And by a tad, we mean at least more than 300,000 that they had to accept back from a company with boatloads of cards that no one wants anymore. And if Nvidia was to release the next generation earlier, even few people would consider to buy Pascal new. And if we look at other sources from Digitimes, we can see that Nvidia is sitting on over 1 million Pascal GPUs, not just the 300,000. Those 300,000 GPUs equates for an entire quarter of gigabyte sales of graphics cards. So it's a massive deal that Nvidia took 300,000 cards back and then could potentially have 600,000 to 700,000 cards on top of that. Many are speculating that in order to make sure they're not stuck with these new cards after releasing the new ones, Nvidia is pushing back the launch as far as they can. The theory seems pretty solid, and considering there's no real competition from AMD, we wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. With all of that out of the way, what's really important here isn't when the cards might see the light of day, but how hard they'll be able to flex on the haters when they do. Or as we do here at the UFD Tech office, we flab, we flex and dab. Yeah. Now, Nvidia has had just about 2 years to work on their next-gen architecture, which means we should expect it to be a bit of a monster. But just how much of a monster are we talking about here? Tank, you capitalized monster. What's up with that? It's not always the energy drink. Well, we don't really know yet, but somewhat believable rumors have given us a pretty good idea. The first is less rumor than speculation, but it's definitely not unfounded speculation. This particular line of speculatory speculationizing suggests that the new cards, at least on the higher end side of things, will be able to manage 4K gaming at over 120 Hz. The reasoning here is pretty sound. No current gen mainstream gaming cards can handle 4K gaming at super high frame rates, but Nvidia is working on the big format gaming displays as well as their new G-Sync modules that are geared precisely for that. This either means that Nvidia thinks people will go out and buy Titan Vs or two of the next gen higher cards to power the displays, or that the upcoming cards will be able to do it just fine. These cards are also expected to be capable of driving somewhat scaled down ray tracing, which is pinned as the next big thing in the graphics industry. Considering just how much horsepower ray tracing requires, the cards could be the beefiest cards that ever beefed. But if that's a little too vague for your taste, how about some hard specifications? Yeah, we have some rumors to cover that too for both the 1180 and 1170 cards. However, these don't exactly correlate with them being able to power 4K 120 Hz. And unfortunately, they both come from WCCF tech, which, as far as we can tell, may have farted most of it out, providing absolutely zero sources for said info or any kind of assurance as to its legitimacy. But as sketchy and unverified as the info is, it's still worth taking a look at, primarily because it doesn't actually seem all that unlikely. In fact, it's kind of so underwhelming that it's possibly believable. So according to the site, the GTX 1180 is said to be built on the GT104 architecture, T for Turing. Nothing too shocking there as the 80 cards go, as they usually come with the 104 class on whatever die they're on. The GPU's die size is said to come in at a fat, roughly 400mm squared, significantly larger than its Pascal equivalent. The card is expected to sport 3,584 CUDA cores, 8 or 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 running at 16 gigabits per second with a bandwidth of 512 gigabytes per second, a 1.6 gigahertz base clock boostable to around 1.8 gigahertz, and a TDP somewhere in the range of 170 to 200 watts. That basically sounds like a 1080 Ti with a bit more power efficiency. The Turing lineup is also expected to be built on the 12 nanometer process. The site expects the card to feature a peak of 13 teraflops in compute performance, which should be enough to kick the Titan XP and 1080 Ti to the curb if you don't include their overclock variants, because that's only stock we're comparing. The site went on to give the supposed GTX 1170 the same treatment. The card would be built on the same GT104 architecture, just like before, with the same 400mm squared die size, and as anyone could guess, the 1170 will be significantly less powerful than the 1180. It'll supposedly be equipped with 2,688 CUDA cores, 8 or 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory running at 12 gigabits per second with a bandwidth of 384 gigabytes per second. We're highly doubting it'll actually feature 16 gigabytes of VRAM, primarily because it'll undoubtedly boost the card's price up significantly. Its base clock will apparently be 100 megahertz lower than the 1180 while boosting to the same 1.8 gigahertz. The card is expected to run at a TDP of 100 to 160 watts. Compute performance is also expected to come in at 9.75 teraflops. Basically, WCCF Tech is putting the 1170's performance just under that of a stock 1080 Ti and the 1180 at the top of the charts. It doesn't really take a programmer to make those assumptions, and the numbers given are somewhat what we'd expect from a brand new card lineup if they're not looking to impress. Nvidia wouldn't release a new line of cards after 2 years without bringing significantly more performance to the table, so I would count those exact specifications as being a little underwhelming, but still, it's more likely than not that at least 90% of this information could be fact than false, and we won't know whether that's the case or not until Nvidia drops a truth bomb on our heads. But again, anybody who pays attention to cards could have guessed this. But that being said, we wouldn't be all that surprised to see even somewhat similar numbers in the official spec sheet. By now, you'll have noticed that we've been calling the cards the 11 series, but early rumors actually suggested Nvidia might skip 11 and go straight to 20, because that's how you count, meaning we'd be getting cards along the lines of the GTX 2080 and 2070. And while that might still turn out to be the case, the 11 series branding just makes so much more sense, because that's how normal people count. And before anybody in the comments says, well, they skipped the 800 series, they actually didn't. There are 800 series cards out in the wild. You just have to go find them. They didn't skip it. They just didn't put it in a desktop class GPU. So yes, they did count 7, 8, 9. Then they had 10. It's likely going to be 11. But the 11 series makes enough sense that Lenovo hasn't been shy about referring to the upcoming cards as the 11 series, doing so very casually in an on-camera interview with Brainbean. Speaking of manufacturers casually dropping likely under NDA information on the masses, a possible representative of Gigabyte UK explained that we should expect mobile versions of NVIDIA's new GPUs closer to, quote, the end of the year, with Lenovo coming in later confirming the same timeline, considering the mobile versions of NVIDIA's cards arrived just a few months after the debut of their desktop counterparts. This fits in perfectly with other rumors suggesting a July/August release. Lenovo also apparently gave Laptop Media a bit of a lowdown on the GTX 1160 equipped with 6 GB of VRAM, but the report seems flaky at best. Speaking of flaky, according to some especially strange speculation, NVIDIA might skip the 12nm process for their GPUs entirely in order to not be outdone by AMD. You see, AMD's Navi architecture is going to be built on the 7nm process when it launches sometime in late 2019, early 2020, while NVIDIA is expected to jump to 12nm with the release of the new generation. And while we highly doubt NVIDIA would scrap a ton of progress on 12nm in order to jump ship to 7nm, this rumor does have some merit. TSMC, the foundry that produces chips for various companies, including NVIDIA, is already well underway producing 7nm chips, and I guess there's a slim possibility that said chips will make their way into the new cards in time, especially since they said that NVIDIA was one of their customers. But whether they're 7nm or 12nm products, many are suggesting that this generation of cards will be significantly pricier than we've ever seen. There are a few factors driving this line of speculation. The first is that because miners will likely snap the cards up as soon as possible at super high prices thanks to the new GDDR6 memory standard, NVIDIA or retailers might at least initially severely mark up the prices of the cards to make as much profit as possible as quickly as possible. And while we're not too eager to believe that will be the case, we can't completely rule it out. Speaking of GDDR6 though, that noise is expensive, significantly more so than the current GDDR5 and GDDR5X memory. And that price premium alone could very well likely trickle down to consumers, and by very well, it's going to. The final factor that could possibly send pricing for new GeForce cards to the moon is performance. That's right, if these cards perform as well as many are expecting them to, their performance alone could be a major driver behind higher pricing. All of that out of the way, we tend to agree with PC Games' stance in that we don't think NVIDIA would price these things too much higher than last generation. First of all, it wasn't NVIDIA bumping up the card's price during the mining boom at the start of the year, it was the retailers and the manufacturers. As for the performance alone justifying higher prices, sure. If the GTX 1180 handily outperforms the 1080 Ti, which by all indications it actually should be able to do that, it would make sense for it to cost more. But that doesn't mean GTX 1080 Ti's will stick with the same pricing as they're at right now. The only smart move NVIDIA can make here is to sell the new cards at a minor price premium due to the pricier GDDR6 and to treat the current gen lineup to a big ol' price cut. We don't think $749 to $799 for an 1180 would be all that surprising to see, but much higher than that, and NVIDIA will undoubtedly lose significant sales. But anybody who's saying it's $1,500, don't trust that. Let's move on to almost totally confirmed. One of the very first rumors to start doing the rounds surrounding NVIDIA's next-gen cards also happens to be the one very few people have problem believing. The rumor stated that the new cards would come equipped with GDDR6 memory. During NVIDIA's GTC event back in March, Gamers Nexus spoke to the memory maker SK Hynix about the new memory standard, and the conversation was very enlightening. The company revealed that they'd start mass producing their GDDR6 modules sometime in June or July, and that they'd be making it into most, if not all, of NVIDIA's upcoming gaming architecture cards. Similarly, other memory manufacturers, including Samsung and Micron, have also already started producing GDDR6 modules for use in the next-gen card. But one of the clearest indications that NVIDIA's upcoming cards will feature the new standard came much more recently when a picture of a supposed next-gen NVIDIA PCB surfaced online. While the board didn't feature an actual GPU, it's supposedly a prototyping board after all. It was clearly equipped with at least 12 gigabytes of Micron's GDDR6. All of this is to say that GDDR6 on the next round of GeForce cards is essentially confirmed. And literally nothing else. That's right, we're still more in the dark about these new cards than Bane was when he was a kid. And while we have no shortage of rumors to fill in the canyons of information NVIDIA is leaving unfilled, there's no replacement for official info. Technically, we don't actually know a single gosh dang thing about the next gen cards, apart from they're definitely going to be released at some point. They're should be faster than the current gen and GDR6. We can speculate about what they'll be called, what they'll be built on, how well they'll perform when they'll arrive, and how much they'll cost when they do finally emerge from NVIDIA's especially secretive lair. But until NVIDIA decides to stop being lame and unveils the freaking things, we don't know jack. All of that being said, whether any of these rumors turn out to be true or not, they definitely make for some interesting discussions, which is why we're making this video in the first place. Because there's been a lot of information out in the open and we wanted to condense it all into a single video so that you guys get a lay of the land of what we can expect, which is basically we have no clue. So thanks for watching this. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. Get subscribed to stay up to date on all of our tech related content, 1180 rumor and otherwise. Also, that's basically it. There's no also. I'm Brett with the UFD Tech channel. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see your smiling faces again in the next video. Cheers.